All right, we are now joined on the Sharks Audio Network by the radio play-by-play voice of the Vegas Golden Knights. It is Dan Duva joining us. Dan, what's going on, man? Happy holidays. How are you doing?
I'm well, Ted. Same to you. Same to you. All's well.
That's good to hear. And I guess we could say all is well extends beyond you to the greater Vegas Golden Knights franchise as the team is playing some good hockey, is at the top of the division. And I don't know where, when things got started off a little bit slow versus maybe some of the doubters in the offseason, is this where you expected things to be right now?
Well, it's always hard to expect that the team is going to have the best points percentage in the NHL at the Christmas break, but that's exactly where the Golden Knights are. Uh, there were a number of pieces that departed for bigger contracts. Jonathan Marchessault, Chandler Stevenson, and even some support players, Michael Amadio, William Carrier, and don't forget Logan Thompson in a trade. So with those pieces having departed, you wondered, where would the offense come from? Most obviously would be the guys who had been hurt. Would they stay healthy and then produce? Well, even though Mark Stone has missed a little bit of time, he is still better than a point per game. Jack Eichel is on pace for a career season. But then the players who've stepped up, Brett Howden, Keegan Colasar, these are guys who did not expect double-digit goals for the entire season. And here we are. Only Ivan Barbashev has more goals than Brett Howden. Colasar already has a new career high in 9, among others. And it just things are coming together really well. Really, of late, the team defense has really allowed this team to flourish, along with the offense that has been pretty consistent for most of the season.
Let's talk about Jack Eichel for a second, because that's one of the things that I've been looking at with highly touted players of seasons yore and the way their careers went along. Eichel comes in at the same time as Connor McDavid. Their careers are forever linked. Jack's got the hardware, and Connor does not at this point of his career. But when you talk to Eichel and you see the way that he has, conducted himself over what's been not his fault, but there was tumult in Buffalo before he came to Vegas. Do you think about that and look maybe at a kid like Macklin Celebrini, who's just at the start and is going to face some of those bumps in the road that both an Eichel and a McDavid have had to deal with?
Well, it's typically the path. There are very few who will come from, whether it's junior hockey, college hockey, and make an immediate splash in the National Hockey League without rolling through, without that roughness of texture that meets so many young players, even those who are high draft picks. And it might be a great rookie season followed by a sophomore slump. There are those challenges. The question is, how do you handle them? And it's not always on the player. You've got to have great teammates. Just chatting with Tomas Hertl today, talking about the veteran players that helped him when he started in San Jose. Just such a big deal. And I think that while Jack Eichel had kind of risen to the captaincy in Buffalo, once he came to the Golden Knights, even though he was an established player, there had been veteran guys who had already won championships. Alex Pietrangelo and Alec Martinez are two who come to mind. And that has just built. Mark Stone hadn't won a championship before, but, he was of that pedigree. And I think that you just see how some of those other more aged veterans conduct themselves. And then I'll also mention the head coach. Bruce Cassidy and Jack Eichel got together that summer. Jack, of course, had already come over in the trade and played some games for the Knights after the surgery, but Bruce Cassidy was hired in the offseason. And they realized their stars were hitched together, and the accountability, building layers of not only the team, but the individual game. And what do you know? They won a Stanley Cup championship their first year together. So, and I think that the success breeds further success when you look around and you see, okay, this is how we did it. And from Celebrini's point of view, you try to, at least I would imagine, look around to see what were the paths for those young guys. How did they get? And it doesn't always require a change of scenery, but you do find who you can kind of hit your star to, veteran players, coach, etc. And sometimes it's like in Chicago, for example, Kane and Taves. So maybe it's Celebrini and Smith in San Jose. Like that. That's always an interesting dynamic too.
The last time that Vegas and San Jose squared off this year was at very different points for San Jose and for Vegas, but San Jose was still in a rough spot at the start of the season, losing, I believe the final was 7-2 in that game, coming on the heels of an 8-3 loss to Winnipeg. San Jose, though, has been much better since that point, and they didn't have Macklin Celebrini when that
Right.
game happened, which is, it sounds strange to talk about a kid who's 20 odd games into his career, but the Sharks are a different team with him on the ice. What are you looking forward to in this game?
Well, certainly Celebrini and Smith playing together. I mentioned a moment ago, who knows how many games they'll play as line mates in their careers, or if they'll anchor different lines. But to see two young, talented players, that's really exciting when they're on the ice at the same time, how they develop chemistry, the creativity. And, the Golden Knights have, because of injury, had to move people around. And it'll be another game for Tomas Hertl to play with William Karlsson and Keegan Kolesar. That's not a combo that we'd ever seen before until the last couple of games. Hertl, of course, in his return to San Jose, that's such a big storyline and speaks glowingly about his time with the Sharks. And it was such a big part of the Golden Knights' first year where you had everybody was cast off from a previous organization. So it was always a big deal. Every night was somebody going against their old team. There's still a little bit of that DNA where you want to really perform well for your new teammate when he plays against his old club. So there's that. But, just like Bruce Cassidy has said when, for example, in the early stages of the season, Shane Knighty, Stanley Cup champion himself and Golden Knights broadcaster, asked Bruce Cassidy, how long does it take to figure out your team? Is it 10, 15 games? And Bruce said, no, it's like half the season. Like maybe sometime in December, we'll figure it out. So whether it's the Golden Knights or the San Jose Sharks, like you said, Ted, these are different teams than when they met earlier in the season. I think the Golden Knights are closer to figuring out what they are, what they can be. And even, Mark Stone, I mentioned, he hasn't scored a goal against a goalie since he returned from injury. He has an empty net goal. It's just, Ivan Barbashev has missed the last few games. Nicholas Waugh has missed the last few games. They had three games, where the entire lineup was full. The 18 regular skaters and the two regular goalies were all available. That lasted for 3 games. It's been an injury-plagued tenure for the Golden Knights going back several years, but they've always found ways, and it's led to opportunities. So who's stepping up now? Right now, the biggest guy to step up has been Keegan Kolesar the last few games, as I mentioned, playing with Hertl and with William Karlsson. So that'll be something to watch on the Vegas side. I'm sure that Tomas Hertl will get a great ovation in the ceremony before tonight's game as well.
Yeah, I want to get to Hertl, but there's two I want to get to first. Kolesar and the contract extension. That felt like a feel-good moment for the franchise, a guy who's been there for the entirety of his career. Like you alluded to, he's not a flashy, high goal-scoring player, but he's got kind of that mentality aspect to him that anybody can kind of look to him and see where it goes from his play. Was it that feel-good moment for him to get that new contract?
Oh, sure. Keegan Kolesar has been a wonderful story for the organization in that he was acquired, part of that draft, the expansion draft. In other words, he had been drafted by Columbus, so he's not technically an original Golden Knight and, one of those players exactly. He's not a homegrown player exactly, but his only NHL games have come with the Golden Knights, and primarily as a fourth-line right winger. But if you look back at his last year of junior hockey, and he wins a WHL championship, and I believe the total was 31 points in 19 games. So the offense can be there. Now, he's one of 2 Golden Knights with over 1,000 hits as a Golden Knight. They're just these players who are sort of typecast. And Keegan he's got the most fights in franchise history, etc. And he has so much trust in him. He and Nicholas Waugh, when they're healthy, it had been William Carrier this year. It's been a mixture of different guys on their other side. But they're often starting games, starting periods. Bruce Cassidy trusts in those guys to set the tempo, maybe get momentum back if it's a goal scored, goal allowed. But this is a little bit different. With Nick Waugh out, where does Kolesar go? And as I mentioned, playing with Hertl and Karlsson, it's been fun to see how he's elevated his game. He still brings all that responsibility on the defensive side. He's still physical. He's going to hit you hard. But now you're seeing that expectation where when he has the puck, he can do something offensively. And that's been fun to see. And these aren't goals going in for Kolesar that are, as Bruce Cassidy said, going in off his butt. Like, he's making really good plays. And a couple of his passes have been elite too. I mean, we recognize the 9 goals, a new career high, but some of the passes that he's made have been terrific too.
Let me ask you about the preseason talk about Vegas, because a lot of the prognosticators were saying this could be the year that Vegas drops off, and they cited a number of factors. And there were people who were doubting Tomas Hertl and, the acquisition there. And I'm just saying, did that talk permeate the dressing room, or was that, even if it did, were they not going to acknowledge it?
Yeah, I don't know that it really did. I think that they have always been content being looked over. When you see folks look at, with all respect to the Edmonton Oilers, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl are the reasons why the Oilers get so much attention. I mean, think about it. They have, they changed coaches after a difficult start last year, and have a terrific season and get to the Stanley Cup final. And even though they're, behind the Knights in the standings right now, a lot of people still have them picked to go further. Again, from the player and coach and management point of view, I think that's just fine. I think that they will take the success and not really worry about what the prognosticators have to say. But I'm not surprised that they're doing as well as they are. And the people who might expect Vegas to fall off clearly aren't staying up to watch the Pacific time zone games, because yes, they have lost a couple of key pieces, but they are constantly replenishing them and developing players who are excelling, and when thrust into greater roles and more responsibility, they are delivering. And they have proven that. I mean, ask Seattle about Chandler Stevenson. Well, Vegas got him from Washington. They were going to put him on waivers. Ask the folks in Ottawa about Michael Amadio, Carolina about William Carrier. And I know Jonathan Marchessault is not having as great a season as he might have hoped in Nashville. But, those are guys who were, when the Knights got them, not like stars or anything. No. Like these were guys who, I mean, again, back to the original Misfits characterization, these were players who were basically cast off. The Knights, because of their culture and an excellent coaching staff, very impressive scouts as well, they find players who will fit the system. Bruce Cassidy puts a lot of time into developing these guys, whether it's star players like Jack Eichel, or if it's a younger player like Brett Howden, what he has turned into, and even younger than that, and let's say Pavel Dorofeyev. So you could go on and on, but I think the Golden Knights were quite content. I don't think that the Golden Knights went into this season thinking that it was going to be any sort of a step back. In fact, quite the opposite, that they expected to do even better than last year, which was a first-round exit and a wild card berth.
Let's talk about the return of Tomas Hertl tonight. This is, I would imagine, pretty big for him, especially as a guy who does wear his emotions on his sleeve the way that he does. I'm just curious how you think he'll respond to the return tonight.
Yeah, I asked him today, and when there's a pregame ceremony in your honor, that doesn't happen very often. Sometimes you have the tributes during a media timeout for returning players. Yeah. And the man played 712 regular season games over 11 years, plus all the playoff moments. That is truly special for the Sharks organization and for any NHL franchise. Just an absolutely special talent and special human being, as you know so well, Ted. I said, of course it's going to be a great ovation. And he said, I hope so. And I think that, and he has said in different ways that a part of him will always be in San Jose. But practically, as it turned out, when he was traded last March, he was not physically in San Jose, with the injury, and he was going to be away from the team because of that. So he was not actually here. So in a strange way, he hasn't really been in San Jose to kind of, I don't want to say, put a bow on it, because as he said, it will always be a part of him, but to kind of come back around and truly bring some closure to his tenure as a San Jose Shark. I mean, his number will be in the rafters and all that stuff, at some point when his career is over here. He's just that kind of a special guy. So I think that it will be meaningful to him to be back here, to have that moment. And it also comes at a time the team that he's competing for is in first place. I think if, you would maybe feel a little bit differently if you'd moved on and it was, for other reasons. He wants to win, and that's part of why he had signed that extension with the Golden Knights. They have won a championship, and they have expectations on winning again.
Just as the last one, what are you expecting to look for in tonight to see if the Knights are playing the game they want to against San Jose?
Yeah, the recent trend has been the Knights giving up the first goal and then really getting to their game in the second period and limiting opposing shots. But then, of course, most recent game, which was on the 23rd at home against Anaheim, Vegas scored first. Then nobody scored until the third. Anaheim tied it, and then Vegas got two to pull away. Vegas has been so good late in games. The third period is, I think it's plus 24, might be plus 25. Let me double check my notes real quick here. Yeah, plus 24 in the third period. I mean, that's just nuts. Their overall goal differential is plus 24 because the first and second cancel each other out. So they've got all these come from behind wins. They get better as the games go along. And that's a significant element for this team. They are patient. You would think that at some point, like, you got to build a lead. In some of these games, you don't want to really tire yourself out by coming from behind all the time, but they can do it. But then it's always a wild card in these games coming out of the 3-day break where you haven't had practice. You fly the morning of the game, etc. So, who gets to their game quickest? And Bruce Cassidy said in our chat earlier today that it's very much about the mental focus. It's not so much about the X's and O's. It's really who's quicker to their mental fortitude that is going to more likely succeed in these games.
Well, Dan, I know you've got stuff to do, so I will let you go, but I appreciate your time as always, and I will see you at the tank in a few hours.
Very good. Thanks, Ted.